And away we go. Hi, everyone. It is Dolphin Open OTA, number one, recap time at the All Dolphins podcast for episode 510, joined again by my good friend Chris Perkins from the South Florida Suns. I say good friend, just it sounds better than to say guy I know, Chris Perkins.
That's right. Hey, you got a lie to sell it, right?
Exactly, and I have to mean it. So my good pal, my good buddy. No, I kid. Perk and I have known each other for a very long time, and yet we've managed to stay friendly with each other. How about that, huh? Perk, long time no see.
Yeah, I know. It's been like a couple hours, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you notice, gang, I said first open OTA because it wasn't the first OTA of the 2025 off season for the Dolphins. They had one of those on Tuesday. It was the one open for this week. As most teams do it, it's one open OTA. And by open, I mean open to the media to view with media availabilities before and after. And then there'll be one next week, and then the veteran mini camp where all 3 days will be open to the media. So we saw practice today. We spoke to, was it 5 or 6 different players after practice? Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, new long snapper Joe Cardona, Cater Kohu, Austin Jackson. I think that was it.
No, Austin did not speak.
Austin did not speak. Okay, see, no. I gave myself away here because I wound up having to leave the premises before the last set of 2 players were to speak. That was Bradley Chubb and Austin Jackson. I was there for Tyreek Cater, Joe Cardona. No offense, even though I didn't partake in his media session. And Jordan Brooks also spoke as the other one as well. So, should we start with Mike McDaniel comments, or should we start with Tyreek Hill comments, or should we start with the practice observations? What's your flavor of choice?
Let's go practice observations.
Okay, go ahead. Give him.
All right. We talked to Teron Armstead after practice. We did. He's
by
lost
the way,
30 pounds. He's lost 30 pounds. He looked good. He's almost an assistant coach for the Dolphins. I will tell you this. We can't give away position information of where guys played. I will tell you this. Liam Eichenberg played one position all practice that I noticed, and he had a bad snap today. So that's my observation about Liam.
Geez.
That's my observation. I'm just saying, I thought that Liam was a backup guard. He played one position today, and he had a bad snap. I'm not going to say what position he played, but I'm just going to say that about Liam. Okay, that's one of my observations.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is an all pro at work.
That is. It was a bit of a surprise to me. I thought he'd be at the other position, but he had one bad snap today, and he only played one position. Now, other observations. I know. I'll probably get reprimanded for that. I know. I'll probably get. I was surprised by that. I thought from the front line guys, Jaylen Waddle was just shaking these dudes. Nobody could contain Jaylen Waddle. Now, you don't have a first-team cornerback per se out there. I know Cater Kohu is in the slot. But we saw Storm Duck out there. We saw BJ Adams, the undrafted kid from UCF. We saw Kendall Sheffield. We saw Cater out there. Said that. Who am I?
Ethan Bonner.
Ethan Bonner. Nobody could contain Jaylen Waddle, which is good for the Dolphins offense. We'll see what it means for the Dolphins defense. There were some TFLs, tackles for losses out there. Chop Robinson had one of them. I think Bradley Chubb had one of them. I thought the edge rushers looked pretty good. We did not see Jalen Phillips do any 11-on-11. By the way, these guys, as you probably know, are out there in shorts and T-shirts and helmets. There's no shells, which are like half shoulder pads, no shoulder pads, no contact. So when we say TFL, it's kind of like flag football. You kind of grab them and wrap them up, or you touch them, or whatever. I thought the starters looked good on offense. On defense, the starters, predictably, there's some work to be done, but the edge rushers, I thought did look pretty good. I will let you give some of your observations here.
You kind of said it all, so I'm done. Thanks everyone. Bradley Chubb, we should point out, coming back from the torn ACL sustain in December 2023, looked really, really good. Again, it's an OTA, but he moved very, very well, which is all you want to see. The fact that Jalen Phillips is just even practicing or out there was doing individual drills before the 7-on-7, 11-on-11s, that's a major bonus that he's even out there. What's the timing? 8 months removed from a torn ACL, which followed the torn Achilles tendon. So just the fact that he's out there was massively, massively encouraging. Quick attendance notes, and it was interesting to me though because I went back and looked at my open OTA observations from last year. The first one, the number of players missing was in double digits.
Yep.
And today it was Zach Sealer we didn't spot, Jonnu Smith, James Daniels, the free agent acquisition from the Steelers, who's coming back from a torn Achilles, and then there was one more, and of course I'm going to forget who it was. Who was it?
Zach.
Sealer, Jonnu Smith. I should look at my story here real quick. Sealer.
Yeah, there were 4, and I can't.
Jalen Ramsey. Duh, Jalen Ramsey.
Oh well, yeah. I don't even consider him.
No, correct. Yeah. Okay, so what stood out to me? Bradley Chubb absolutely stood out to me. Tua looked good, threw the ball very well. Jalen Waddle obviously stood out. Outside of that, I can tell you there was one play Cater lined up outside on Jalen Waddle and had him covered like a blanket. I mean, that was very, very impressive to see. Outside, and as Perk mentioned, we're not supposed to, per Dolphins reporting rules, tell you which players line up at which spots. I'm not going to do what Perk did. We're also not allowed to tell you which players lined up with what team, first team, second team. Right. That's against the reporting rules. I wish I could tell you I was impressed by Zach Wilson. I was not. It was a first practice where I got to watch him, and I hope it gets a lot better from here. And again, it's extraordinarily early, but I was hoping to get a little bit more of a positive first impression. Wasn't there. Quinn Ewers, nothing major one way or the other. He had one absolutely beautiful touch throw down the left sideline to a rookie free agent, Monterey Baldwin, who could have made a difficult over-the-shoulder catch, but not impossible, and he dropped it. But that was a beautiful touch pass. The kind of touch you see from Tua. What Tua does very, very well is he feathers those passes over the top and coming down. That was what Quinn Ewers did on that ball. And then D. Eskridge, I don't know if you saw this on social media when the Dolphins put up highlights of their, phase 2 work, and there's a play where Eskridge reaches out with one hand and just snags it like a Rondé Gadsden. Well, he did that today with his left hand.
Yep.
On a pass on a rollout, and it was like, holy smokes, what a catch. And this is a guy who hopes to steal one of those final spots at wide receiver after Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and we'll get to Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Malik Washington, and
NWI.
There you go. And I should mention again, if I'm doing attendance, all that 2 players were wearing red jerseys other than the quarterbacks. Usually this symbolizes the player dealing with an injury, so take it easy on him. That was Taj Washington and Keon Smith, and it was Storm Duck who had the orange jersey. Anything stand out to you as far as the quarterbacks were concerned?
No, I agree with you on Zach Wilson, both as far as he was not sharp and as far as it's very early. Let's not draw any final conclusions. He's in a new offense.
That's my final conclusion. I'm saying joke. Kidding.
That's right. We are making lasting impressions right now. No, he's in a new system, throwing to new receivers. So, no final decisions made there. But yeah, I would agree with your assessments of the quarterbacks. I didn't draw any conclusions on Brett Gardner, the rookie tryout signee, the brother of Gabbert. Did I say Gardner? I did. Brett Gabbert, the brother of Blaine Gabbert. So, but I think he's probably just training camp arm. Just because, look, we know that Tua and most starters around the league don't do a whole lot except in joint practices. If one of those other 3 quarterbacks gets hurt, or one of those other 2, Zach Wilson or Quinn Ewers, then Brett Gabbert would be there as the other arm, as essentially the backup quarterback. So I think that's a big reason why you see a guy like Brett Gabbert in, why you see a guy like James Blackman in. They are nowadays, they are the backup to the backup to the backup. The starter will not do a whole lot. So yes. But I agree with your quarterback assessments.
And then this has to be mentioned again, because that's why we're out there for. And it's the first OTA open to the media. But Cam Smith was on the wrong end of the longest pass play of the day, which was Tua to Waddle. And then certainly appeared to everybody who was watching to come up lame after it and looked like he was fighting it a little bit physically. Again, as first impressions go for 2025 offseason, wasn't great.
Not great, not encouraging. It didn't show the progress that you would hope to see in the first public workout, the first workout open to the media. Again, very early, not to worry, except this is more of what we've seen in previous years. So again, no final conclusions, but no reason for optimism or encouragement necessarily.
Correct. And probably those were the two guys who, to me, I wanted to see something very positive, like right away.
Yeah.
Because Zach Wilson could wind up at some point playing an important role for the Dolphins as a number 2 quarterback. And then Cam Smith, who could help, answer the big question mark at cornerback, hoping to see, like, from the start, the idea is logically, please show something like positive. You get out of the practice, like, yeah, there's something there. And unfortunately, that was not the case. I don't know if there's anything else really to be said about the practice. I
thought, I admittedly, I did not watch Kenneth Grant very much, the first round pick D tackle. I thought Jonah Savaiinaea, I thought he moved well. They're not out there blocking. Again, no pads. But I did think that he moved well. He's athletic, agile. I guess he showed some strength and physicality. He looked good. That's what I'll say. I don't have anything bad to say about either him or Kenneth Grant. Or I caught a little bit of Jordan Phillips out there also, the 5th round pick. D tackle, and he kept his feet. He looked athletic. He looked agile. So I don't have anything definitive to say about those draft picks, but they all look good. They all look like they belonged. So take that for what it's worth.
Okay. And what I really liked is that they kept their feet under them.
They did. There you go. You gotta be where your feet are.
I'm actually being a complete wise ass.
I know.
I'm throwing out like the nice football jargon of people who really know their football. Am I doing this right? They kept their feet under them as opposed to above their head. I don't know.
Good pad level. Play behind his pads. That's one we'll hear in training camp.
Yes, and the cornerbacks show some loose hips, fluid hips, and all that. Okay, the wise ass portion of the podcast is now over.
Well, we got to talk Tyreek.
That's a good point. Tyreek says he now weighs 183 pounds compared to 197 when he first joined the Dolphins. Says this was his Kansas City weight. Says he's doing a preliminary race June 13th, which is the day after the Dolphins wrap up their offseason program for veterans. This always point that out. The rookies actually stay after the end of the offseason program. They do some rookie orientation stuff for a couple of weeks. I don't know the exact amount, but the offseason program ends June 12th with the last day of minicamp, June 13th in Los Angeles. Tyreek Hill is racing somebody in a prep race for his race against Noah Lyles. Still believe it when I see it. And then Mike McDaniel was asked about the race with Noah Lyles if he had any objections to it, and Mike McDaniel was like, "Race? What race?"
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. Really the reason that I asked Mike McDaniel about the race between Tyreek and Noah Lyles was really to see what Mike McDaniel would say about the race. If he would say something along the lines of, if Tyreek plans to run this race, he's got to get team approval. Or I don't think that Tyreek should do this. He should focus on football. but the answer was more along the lines of, I'm not going to stand in the way of it. And really, I didn't make a big deal about it, but I kind of thought this kind of seems like more of the same, as opposed to this year taking a different stance with Tyreek, or the players taking more of a leadership role or something different. At this very early point, it looks like more of the same. Tyreek will do whatever Tyreek wants to do. And I asked it again, hoping that Mike would say, well, we need to talk about this, or Tyreek, can't just do whatever he wants to do. This needs to be approved by the team, but it looks like Tyreek is just going to do whatever Tyreek wants to do.
My counter to that is I would tell you I was there for Tyreek's entire media session, that he was a lot more humble than he usually is, even as he's talking about shooting for 2,000 yards. Because he was basically saying, I want to get 2,000 yards, and I want to win a playoff game. And if both happen, nobody's going to complain of like, well, he was focusing too much on 2,000 yards. No, well, if they win a playoff game, then he helped accomplish the goal. He talked about how, I'm trying to think of the exact phrasing. He said that he doesn't necessarily feel he deserves to be a captain. Right. That he has to go about proving himself to his teammates with his work ethic and all that. As is very, very much public knowledge, he's going through a divorce, talked about dealing with that, and talked about going to church and therapy to deal with the situation, spending a lot of time at the Dolphins facility, helping in that particular goal. And again, it wasn't the bombastic usual Tyreek, or sometimes Tyreek that you get, which certainly a step in the right direction. He's got looked like a cast on his right wrist. So I don't know that there was anything to take from that media session that would contradict what everybody else is saying. And again, he said again, and this was so obvious, that the comments he made after the Jets game were out of frustration. And obviously him pulling himself out of the game was out of frustration. And I have taken the position, I've said this before, other than the fact that he didn't communicate properly to his teammates and coaches, I'm going to pull myself out because I've been dealing with an injury the entire year, and we're not making the playoffs because Denver's kicking the crap out of Kansas City over there, and we got no shot. I mean, again, other than the fact that he didn't tell his coaches up front what he was doing, I don't know that it's that big a deal. And I've gotten pushback on that of like, well, other players are like, fighting and stuff. Yeah, he's played injured the whole year, and you're not going to the playoffs. Is it really so bad that he wants to give up before the end of the year? Is it really that egregious? Again, had he told his coaches?
I'm not mad at Tyreek for that. And I've written this and I've said this numerous times, because really, here's what I think, and here's what I saw being there that day, is I don't think Tyreek meant that. They were just words that tumbled out of his mouth. He didn't mean it. He didn't make eye contact when he was saying it. He was kind of looking away. He was struggling for words. He didn't know what to say. And those were the words that tumbled out of his mouth. I will tell you this, from being there on the spot, Tyreek did not want to talk post-game. He was leaving the locker room, and team personnel urged him, suggested, insisted that he come back and speak to the media. He was very frustrated. He didn't feel like talking. He was irritated, and those are the words that tumbled out of his mouth. He was forced to speak, and those were the words that he spoke. I was more offended by Jaylen Ramsey, who in the locker room, when he was told, you're a team captain, you're a leader, you need to speak, he said, no, I'm not going to speak. I'll just take the fine. Fine me. I'll just take the fine. Jaylen, you need to speak. I'll just take the fine. Jaylen, you got to speak. I'll take the fine. Come on. Now, and Jaylen Ramsey did finally speak, and he didn't speak out of frustration like Tyreek did, but Tyreek, I'm not going to fault the Dolphins for doing their job. I'm glad they did their job. Tyreek should have spoken. Tyreek should have been urged to speak. The Dolphins did the right thing with that. the fact that neither Tyreek nor Jaylen Ramsey wanted to speak, and their team leaders, and you look at how guys like, contrast that with guys like Teron Armstead and Calais Campbell, who willingly spoke and were good and insightful, well, that kind of tells you about the leadership styles from those players, from Tyreek and Jaylen, as opposed to Calais and Teron. That's just kind of what you're dealing with. That's what you were dealing with. That's what you were dealing with Tyreek. I suspect that that's still going to be what you're dealing with Tyreek. I don't think Tyreek is a bad guy. I think Tyreek has knucklehead tendencies, but we'll wait and see what happens this season. If Tyreek is the same guy personally and is still trolling fans and all that, well, it's not a surprise, right? We all know what to expect from Tyreek. If Tyreek changes, then good for Tyreek. But no matter what Tyreek said today or what he said after the Jets game, I expect the same version of Tyreek in 2025 that we saw in 2022, 2023, and 2024, for better or for worse.
And hopefully the idea is you get on the field production from Tyreek 2022 and 2023, because let's not make any mistake about it. This is the best player on the roster. Yep. And with Ramsey out the door, Teron gone, and Calais Campbell now in Arizona, I'm not sure it's close. Yep. And if the Dolphins are going to do anything, and I said this before, special on offense in 2025, Tyreek needs to be a big part of that. You kind of stole my thunder a little bit there. I'm a little bit mad at you, Perk, because I was about to segue with, speaking of players who don't like talking to the media, and then bring up Jaylen Ramsey.
Yes.
Because Jaylen Ramsey, if we haven't mentioned it before, Jaylen Ramsey has no use for us.
No.
And that's being polite. So Mike McDaniel was asked again about Jaylen Ramsey before practice. And if it wasn't Mike McDaniel and being the nice, polite guy that he was, I would have been very interested to hear the exact comments he really would have wanted to say, like, don't talk to me about Jaylen Ramsey. I don't want to talk about Jaylen Ramsey. But he said it very politely, but it was very clear he has no desire to speak about Jaylen Ramsey. Jaylen Ramsey, for his part, after on Tuesday putting out the tweet that simply said 5, ... ostensibly suggesting it's only 5 days until we get to June, which is when the Dolphins can make the trade with a lesser cap hit. Jaylen Ramsey, and there was a lot of reaction to that, and Jaylen put another post on social media, and see if you can make any sense of that one. Perker, your thoughts on this? And the post was very simply, the false narratives, either lame or funny, don't let it faze you. Wish well and blessings among all anyways. This, for anyone who needs it, by the way, finished a week strong. Love you all for real.
I need it. I need it. I'll take Jaylen's advice and I will finish the week strong. That's my whole interpretation of this whole situation. I will follow Jaylen's advice and finish the week strong. I mean, it's typical Jaylen Ramsey, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
You have this cryptic tweet and you get a reaction to it, and then you send out something about false narratives and God bless everybody. Good night. This is what we deal with Jaylen Ramsey. I don't know what you want to think of this as a Dolphins fan, but it is Jaylen is out the door. He is done with this franchise. The franchise is done with him, and I don't think anybody really wants to go into this. But I have a feeling that if somebody lights a fuse from either side, the other side will explode, and we'll get some details about some details, not the whole story about what happened. I think that's the case.
Yeah, but I think it would come from Ramsey, not from the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins, once they will leave that chapter behind once it's closed. I have a very simple solution, Jaylen. If you want to get rid of the false narratives, explain yourself. I mean, it's like a lot of talking in codes. I mean, kind of the message is kind of there with the writing orange. And I have to share my little joke here because I was very proud of myself there. So Perk and I were both there when we ran into Teron, and I think Perk pointed out to Teron, like, you're still on the roster, and then Teron looked at us. By the way, anybody thinking Teron might change his mind and play again, he's not, because as Perk mentioned, he's lost like 30, 40 pounds, and he looks like he's not an offensive lineman anymore.
No.
So anyway, so Perk tells Teron, like, you're still on the roster, and Teron goes, only for a couple more days. And I said, so what, are you going to put out a tweet with the 4 ...
And Teron laughed. I wonder if he understood the context or if he was just laughing to be nice. But he laughed like he had a true understanding of what that was all about. Teron is great. Teron is great. That was it was a genuine laugh. I think that he understood. So that was a really funny moment with Teron. Yeah, really funny moment. We're gonna miss Teron.
Yeah, no, we will. And then he's at camp yesterday. He was at camp on Tuesday as well, and for the OTAs, he walked out with his teammates. And again, no, he's not playing. But I asked Mike McDaniel before practice, because Teron said this after he announced his retirement, that coaching is something that would interest him, and he's out here. He doesn't. Again, it's voluntary. Number one, number two. Even though technically he's on the roster, he's already said he's retiring. Doesn't need to be there, and he obviously enjoys being around the guys. So I said, I've been in any discussions about perhaps him joining the coaching staff, and McDaniel basically answered maybe, but so that would be somewhere down the road. There's nothing like imminent as far as that, but I could see it, and I think the Dolphin offensive lineman certainly could learn some things from the dude. So we addressed Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Ramsey. He's going to get traded. It's not going to be for a ton, and it's not just. I said this from the beginning, and again, for those who think I don't know what I'm talking about, all the national talking heads are saying exactly what I've been saying, that the biggest complicating issue is Ramsey's salary and the Dolphins' level of willingness to absorb some, as in pay some of his salary, and how much is what's going to be the impediment. And it could reach a point where the Dolphins are going to be like, get this guy the hell away from here. We'll pay a little bit more, even though right now, I mean, out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yep, exactly. So it's going to be interesting to see how this gets resolved from that standpoint, because I agree with you. That's probably the major sticking point. The way you see it right now is who's going to pay how much of the freight here, and the Dolphins are kind of at a disadvantage here, aren't they? Because they want to get rid of him. They want to get this money off their books, but how much of it are you willing to pay? I think that, and we both said this, I think most logically and ideally, Jaylen Ramsey goes to a team that's kind of close, right? That he's the finishing touch as opposed to going to Carolina where they're rebuilding. I think he ideally goes to, and I'm not saying he's going to Detroit, but like a Detroit or a Baltimore or a team along those lines that, you need one more move so that you can win one or two more playoff games and get to where you want to go. So it's going to be interesting to see if that new suitor is thinking, well, we're this close, so we might as well pay a little more for Jaylen, or if that new suitor is saying we're close, but the Dolphins are desperate, let's take advantage of them and make a good deal for us.
Correct. No, absolutely. We discussed this, you and I, before after practice. It was after practice, that the dilemma of the Dolphins and 30 other teams around the NFL, not 29 other teams, are finding themselves with the second-round picks because of the nasty precedent set by the Houston Texans and giving wide receiver Jaden Higgins, the 34th overall selection, a fully guaranteed rookie contract, with the Cleveland Browns following suit with the 33rd overall pick, and that to this point being the only 2 second-round picks who have signed because of that. What do you see as the final, what's the word I'm looking for, denouement here in this situation between the Dolphins and Savai Naya's agent, who no doubt is saying fully guaranteed? Yes, us too.
I don't know. This is a league-wide dilemma, and it's not just a Dolphins dilemma, but let's look at Dolphins' specific situation like we did with Jaylen Ramsey. The Dolphins are kind of desperate here. They need to get Jonah in there, and I know you're not, in mini camp or training camp, there's no pads, but he's a rookie. And you want to get the rookies as acclimated as you can, especially a guy like Jonah, who he's going to be the starter. This isn't like last year with Patrick Paul, your second-round pick, who was playing behind Teron Armstead. This guy has got to be ready day one, and you need to immerse him as deeply as possible as quickly as possible. So, right now he's not missing any time right now. This is not a big deal right now, but you do want to get this thing resolved so that you can be full speed ahead when you come back for training camp.
Well, dude, he's not missing anything because he's out there.
Right, so, that's what I mean. He's not missing any time right now. So there's no huge rush right now. When training camp starts, I think is when the real pressure starts and the real countdown.
No, I agree. And then I'm very curious to see how that's going to play out, not only in Miami, but around the league. And for those wondering, I discussed this, the worst case scenario. I did my due diligence and research because I went off the top of my head. The last episode I did when I flied. So actually I had two guests. It was myself and I joining me on the podcast. And I threw out I threw out Craig Erickson and Melvin Bratton as guys who entered the draft, didn't sign, entered the draft the following year, and their original drafting team got left holding the bag. And then somebody pointed out somebody else I forgot, Bo Jackson, who did the same thing. Right. And so if it came to that, if it happens anywhere around the league, if a draft pick does not sign, sits out the whole year, enters a draft in 2026, the original drafting team gets nothing. But then obviously the player himself loses out on a year of NFL money and sits out a full year. So it's not beneficial to either party, and obviously let's hope it doesn't come to that. But I don't know that I'm ready to say that all 32 second round picks are going to get fully guaranteed contracts either. Because I think the owners are going to be like, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
Hell no. So that'll be fun to watch. Bradley Chubb spoke. You were there for Bradley Chubb. From what I gathered from the highlights, he called himself about 90 to 95% healthy. Again, he looked fabulous today. Basically said hadn't proven anything of late, which is why he accepted a pay cut. The question, of course, there was the choice he had was telling the Dolphins, no, do what you got to do. Then the Dolphins might have cut him. What would he have gotten on the open market? That's the question.
Yeah, and I think that Chubb wants to be in his forever city right now. He is he turns 30 this year. Is that correct?
So,
yeah. So I think, looking at his career, he's probably thinking, let me get one more big contract, for maybe, 3-4 years, whatever it is. And hopefully it's here in this place, a place where they value him, a place where, look, let's not forget Jaylen Phillips is playing on his 5th-year option this year. So the Dolphins have to make a decision on Jaylen Phillips. So Bradley Chubb, knowing that Mo Kamara did not come on strongly last year as a rookie 5th-round pick, you got Chop Robinson. They need somebody. So I think if you're Bradley Chubb, you look and say, I could have a home here. I could have a forever home here. Let me just take the bite right now up front. I prove myself. I can come back to him on the back end, and maybe I can make up some of this money that I lost. But they really like Bradley Chubb. I think they really want Bradley Chubb to stick around. So I don't blame Chubb for what he did, taking that pay cut. I think if you play the long game, you can come out ahead here.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, he's a guy that the team likes, and he's a good dude, good team player. And when he's been healthy, he's actually been very good. And that leads me to my final thought here is I forgot to mention one guy who really stood out to me. And when I watch these practices, is like I leave and it's like, okay, who did I really notice? And somebody I forgot to mention, Chop Robinson.
Yes, Chop played very well today. Yep.
Yeah. So,
yep. Very well. Hey, let me say this, Poop, and I wrote about this today. It struck me that there's a youth movement going on with the Dolphins. And, Mike McDaniel spoke about this in Palm Beach, but consider the key 30-somethings that were on this roster at this time last year that are out there now, from Tehran to Jaylen Ramsey to OBJ to Agba, Kendall Lamb, Jordan Poyer, Raheem Mostert, I guess Durham Smythe. Like, a lot of those guys are gone, and they are replaced with Kenneth Grant and Jonah and Jordan Phillips, these draftees, and Cam Smith and Cam Good, and you're kind of crossing your fingers on some of them, but a lot of those 30-somethings are gone, and so we're going to see this is kind of a commitment to youth. There aren't a whole lot of 30-somethings as far as key players on this team. Tyreek is one. I think Zach Sealer turns 30. Jonnu turns 30. Jason Sanders turns 30. But yeah, OBJ, Marcus May, Kendall Lamb, all of those guys. There is a true youth movement going on out here, and that struck me watching the OTA today.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
On that note, perk points as we wrap up.
There we go.
So yes, that's going to do it. Please like, subscribe. Since I do my usual disclaimer, I'm not very good at it, but I think I say everything that needs to be said. Please like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Hope you enjoyed. Check out my man Perkins' fine work at sunsentinel.com. The also deep dive with Perk, which is scheduled for when, Perk?
We don't have another date set right now. It's kind of like the Tyreek Noah Lyles race. There's no date set right now.
Are you going to have a preliminary podcast first?
Right. With some random guys like Tyreek. Who's you racing, Tyreek?
No, I know somebody you could have a preliminary podcast with.
Who's that?
Come on, Perk. Do I have to say?
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah. How could I? Oh, nice.
Okay.
Nice reference. Yeah.
Thank you. If you know, you know, and if you don't, I'm not bothering to mention.
That's right.
So again, thanks everyone. Back here Friday. I have no idea what we'll talk about. We'll figure something out. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evening. As I'm taping this, we're 2 hours away from the Florida Panthers going for a second consecutive Eastern Conference final. They lead their series against the Carolina Hurricanes 3-1. Go Panthers. Thanks everyone for watching, and see you next time.